Welcome to Griffonomics.
It is good to be back.
Today is February 16th, 2026,
Yeah.
and I want you to just take a moment. If you've been paying close attention to the intersection of the defense industrial base and artificial intelligence over the last 6 months, there's a sound.
A hum.
Yeah, a very specific low-frequency humming noise in the background. It's not a roar, not yet, but it is a hum.
I like that description.
And it's coming from a company that has undergone what I can only describe as a radical, almost biological transformation.
It really is a metamorphosis. And I don't use that word lightly. We're looking at an entity that, for all intents and purposes, did not exist in its current form a year ago.
We are talking about Palladyne AI, ticker symbol PDYN.
PDYN.
And to really understand why we're dedicating a full deep dive to this specific company today, you have to appreciate the sheer absolute weirdness of their resume.
It is an eclectic history, to put it mildly.
Eclectic doesn't even do it justice. I mean, let's just look at the DNA here for a second. We're talking about a company that started decades ago making animatronic dinosaurs.
For the Jurassic Park ride at Universal Studios, yeah.
They built the Pirates for Disney. They engineered the fountains at the Bellagio in Vegas.
Which, if you really stop and think about it, is a very specific type of robotics. It's not just entertainment.
It's show business.
It is, but it's also high reliability actuation. I mean, think about it. If the T-Rex doesn't lunge at that Jeep at the exact millisecond the car passes, the entire ride is ruined.
Right. The timing has to be perfect.
Perfect. Or the fountains at the Bellagio. If they're out of sync by a fraction of a second, the whole show fails. So while it sounds whimsical, the engineering pedigree required to keep these huge, heavy hydraulic machines moving realistically 12 hours a day, 365 days a year.
It's actually quite serious.
It's incredibly serious.
Okay, that's a fair point.
Okay.
But still, from T-Rex to the Terminator. Because now, as of early 2026, they are building autonomous swarm technology for the Pentagon.
The whole 9 yards.
They've positioned themselves as a critical player in the future of American kinetic warfare. So the core question, the anomaly you're tackling today is how?
Yeah.
How does a company pivot from a pure-play AI software firm, and before that a theme park robot builder, to a vertically integrated mid-tier prime defense contractor in less than 12 months?
That is the multi-million-dollar question. Or I guess, based on their recent guidance for this year, it's the $27 million question.
Exactly. So here's the mission for this deep dive.
Oh.
We're going to unpack this mid-tier prime thesis that Palladyne is effectively betting the farm on.
And it really is a bet the farm moment for them.
Then we're going to analyze the financial inflection point they're projecting for 2026, which involves this massive revenue surge.
A 300% plus surge. It's staggering.
And we are going to look at this concept of the deployment gap in the defense industry, a structural problem everyone talks about, but Palladyne claims they have actually solved.
And just to be clear on our source material, we are pulling from a thick stack of documents today. We've got the Q3 2025 financials. We have the early 2026 guidance. We have the raw transcripts from the CEO, Ben Wolff, who's been very, very vocal about the strategy.
Extremely vocal.
And the specific acquisition announcements regarding GuideTech and Crucis. Plus, we've got the technical details on that new Air Force Research Laboratory contract.
Right. And a quick disclaimer before we jump in, this is a granular investigative report. It's all based on factual source material. We are impartial observers here.
Completely.
We're analyzing the corporate strategy, the engineering challenges, and the numbers. We aren't endorsing any political viewpoints or, the nature of the industry itself.
No, we just look at the mechanics of the business. We follow the data.
Precisely.
So where do we start?
So let's rewind. Section 1, the origin story and the strategic pivot. Because you just can't understand where they're going without looking at the wreckage they left behind to get here.
It's a fascinating trajectory. The company, which, used to be called Sarcos.
Right, Sarcos.
It spent 30 or 40 years in hardware robotics. Like you said, the fun stuff, theme parks.
The fun fact that always gets me is the Bellagio fountains. I mean, there's complex engineering, hydraulics, timing, synchronization.
A massive choreography problem.
But it's not exactly a hunter-killer drone.
No, but it establishes a pedigree in complex electromechanical systems. The evolution really started, though, when they moved into industrial exoskeletons.
The Iron Man suits.
Basically, yeah. Iron Man suits for logistics workers, for people in shipyards. They were actually under Raytheon for a while, then they got spun out.
And that was the 2023-2024 era. The struggle
The
years.
struggle was very real. They were trying to commercialize incredibly complex hardware. They burned through cash at just a prodigious rate.
And the market just wasn't ready.
The market wasn't adopting these exoskeletons fast enough. The physics were hard, the batteries were still too heavy, and the ROI for the customer, the return on investment, just wasn't quite there yet.
It turns out it's often cheaper to just hire two strong guys than to buy a $100,000 robot suit.
That's the brutal math of it. So they did what a lot of companies do when hardware gets too hard.
They pivoted.
They pivoted hard to software only.
The asset-light model. Oh, investors love that term.
It's the magic word.
We don't own factories, we just write code. High margins, infinite scale. It's the Silicon Valley dream. You build the brain, you let someone else build the body.
Exactly. And for most of 2025, that was Palladyne's story. They tried to be the brain without the body. They wanted to license their AI, their Swarm OS, to other robot makers.
The pitch was, we have this amazing control software, you build the robot, we'll make it smart.
Right. But then, late in 2025, CEO Ben Wolff had this epiphany, a realization that completely flipped the strategy on its head again.
This is what he calls the asset-light trap.
Correct. Wolff realized that in the defense sector specifically, being a software startup is a death sentence if you rely on other people to build the hardware.
Why is that? Because in the commercial world, Microsoft doesn't build the laptops. Well, mostly not.
Yeah.
Android doesn't build the Samsung phones. Why is defense so different?
Because of something called the deployment gap. And this is a really critical concept to understand for this whole story.
Okay.
In the consumer world, hardware is commoditized. You can buy 1 million identical chips or screens from a dozen different suppliers in Asia. It's a solved problem.
Right.
In defense, specifically in autonomous systems, the hardware is not commoditized yet. It is bespoke. It's custom built for very specific, very demanding applications.
So you're just writing the code.
If you're just writing the code, you are waiting. All you do is wait. You wait for a hardware partner to build a prototype, then you wait for them to fix the prototype, then you wait for them to figure out how to manufacture it at scale.
You're powerless.
Completely. You can have the most brilliant AI code in the world. Let's call it Swarmos for now. But if you don't control the factory that builds the drone or the supply chain that sources the chips, you are at the mercy of legacy manufacturers who are notoriously slow.
Wolff used a great analogy in the transcripts. He brought up Steve Jobs and Elon Musk.
It's a really powerful comparison, and it cuts right to the heart of it. He asked, would the iPhone have been a hit if Apple only wrote iOS but let some random third party build the phone?
No way.
Probably not. The whole magic of the iPhone was the user experience, which depends on that tight integration of the screen, the chip, the antenna, and the code. When you swipe your finger, the screen has to react instantly. That requires hardware-software optimization that you can only get if you control both.
And the Tesla analogy.
Same idea. Would Tesla be the giant it is today if Elon had just written self-driving code and tried to sell it to Ford?
Of course not.
No. Tesla won because they figured out how to manufacture the car and the software. They built the gigafactories. They control the whole stack.
So Palladyne decided that to win in defense, they had to control both the brain, the AI, and the body, the hardware.
They couldn't just wait for someone else to build a robot good enough for their software. They had to own the metal. They had to own the factory floor. They had to own the problem end to end.
Which brings us to Section 2, defining this mid-tier prime. Because this isn't just about building a factory. It's about positioning themselves in a very specific void in the market.
Exactly.
Can you kind of explain the geography of the defense industry right now? Because to an outsider, it just looks like a bunch of big, scary companies.
Okay, so to understand the void, you have to look at the two extremes. On one side, you have the primes, the giants.
Lockheed Martin, RTX.
Right, RTX, which is Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics.
The battleships.
That's the perfect word for them. They have massive, unbelievable scale. They have factories that go on for miles. They have deep, decades-long relationships with the Pentagon. They know how to navigate the bureaucracy. But they are like battleships. They are very, very hard to turn. They are culturally risk-averse. Their development cycles are measured in decades. The F-35 program, for instance, has been running for over 20 years.
And a lot of them operate on cost-plus contracts, right?
Often, yes. Which means they get paid for their costs plus a guaranteed profit. It doesn't exactly incentivize speed or efficiency. If a project takes longer, they don't necessarily lose money. In fact, sometimes the opposite is true.
Okay, so that's one side of the canyon. What's on the other?
The startups, the Silicon Valley tech bros who have Agile code, fast iteration, and brilliant ideas. They're the ones winning the innovation awards. They have the best AI researchers.
But they can't build anything.
They have zero manufacturing capacity. They can build a beautiful prototype in a garage, sure, but they can't build 10,000 units to military spec mil-spec and ship them to a war zone next month. It's just not in their DNA.
If they die in what's called the Valley of Death.
The Valley of Death is the gap between a successful prototype and a real production contract. You build a cool drone, a general loves it, says, great, I'll take 500 of them, and the startup says, we can build maybe 3 a month.
And the general walks away.
The general walks away and goes back to the battleship.
So the mid-tier prime thesis is that Palladyne wants to sit exactly in the middle of that canyon.
It's the Goldilocks zone.
Oh.
They want the agility and the software-first mindset of a startup combined with the manufacturing reliability and certifications of a prime.
And their goal is to provide what the Pentagon referred to in some of our sources as the Department of War is now calling a tradable mass.
A tradable mass. That's a euphemism, if I've ever heard one. Let's decode that for the listener, because it's a really important term.
Please.
It means cheap, expendable, but smart drones. Systems that are sophisticated enough to be effective, but cheap enough that you don't go bankrupt if they get shot down.
Because in modern warfare, like what we've seen in Ukraine,
you lose equipment. Fast. You can't afford to lose a $100 million jet every day. You need thousands and thousands of $50,000 drones. You need to be able to attribute them, to lose them without losing the war. Mass matters again.
And to produce that kind of mass, you need vertical integration. You need to drive the cost down, which means you have to own the manufacturing.
And this is the key. Palladyne didn't just decide to build a factory from scratch. That would have taken years.
They went shopping.
November 17, 2025. This is the date everything changed for them.
It was a roughly $31 million deal. And they acquired 2 entities, GuideTech and the Crucis companies.
Let's break down this new Palladyne structure because it's really like 3 companies in a trench coat now, and each part plays a very specific role.
Okay, lay it out for us. The new anatomy of Palladyne.
You have the mind, the nervous system, and the body.
Okay.
The mind is the legacy Palladyne, the Swarm OS, and the AI software we've been talking about. That's the headquarters. That's the R&D lab full of software engineers.
Then you have the nervous system. That's GuideTech.
Correct. GuideTech is an engineering firm. They specialize in avionics, flight software, and a critical piece of hardware called the brain flight computer.
Why is this the nervous system? What does that mean?
Because the mind, the AI, it's just code. It's abstract. The body, the wings and motors is just metal and plastic. The nervous system is what connects them. GuideTech figures out how to translate the AI's abstract thought, I need to bank left 30 degrees, into the specific electrical signals that move a servo or spin a rotor at a certain RPM.
Without them, the AI is just hallucinations in a server. It can't actually move anything in the real world.
It's locked-in syndrome for a robot. GuideTech provides the spinal cord.
Got it. And the body is Crucis.
Crucis is the manufacturing muscle. They brought a 50,000 square foot facility into the fold, but it's not just about the space. The critical part is that they are AS9100 certified.
Explain why that certification matters. Is that just a piece of paper on the wall?
In aerospace and defense, that piece of paper is everything. It's the price of admission. You cannot just machine a part in your garage and sell it to the Air Force.
Right.
You need rigorous, verifiable quality certifications. AS9100 is the gold standard for aerospace quality management systems. It means every single screw, every weld, every circuit board has a paper trail. It means your processes are audited constantly. Getting that certification from scratch can take years of audits and process engineering.
So by buying Crucis.
By buying Crucis, Palladyne bought the certification. They bought the ability to legally sell parts to the military on day one. They skipped the 2-year waiting period, maybe longer.
And Crucis wasn't just an empty factory waiting for work, right? They were already making stuff.
This is the really crucial detail, especially for investors. Crucis was already a subcontractor for the big players. They were actively manufacturing parts for the F-16, the F-35, Tomahawk missiles, and Bradley fighting vehicles. These are flagship programs.
So overnight, Palladyne goes from being a software company trying to sell code to we are literally building parts for the F-35.
Exactly. It gives them immediate, undeniable legitimacy. When they walk into a meeting with a general now, they aren't just some AI startup with a cool demo. They are a supplier for the F-35. That completely changes the conversation.
It validates certified American production, which is huge currency in Washington right now.
It's everything. And it effectively removes the "but can you build it" objection that kills so many other startups.
They can just point to the Tomahawk missile part on the conference table and say, we built that, we can build our drones too.
Precisely. The argument is over.
Okay, let's move to Section 3, the technology. Because having a factory is great, but if the product isn't special, you're just a glorified machine shop. What makes their AI different?
The key differentiator is this concept of edge versus cloud.
We hear about edge computing a lot, but break it down in a combat context. Why does it matter if the AI is on the cloud or on the drone itself?
Okay, so think about how something like ChatGPT works. You type a prompt, it goes over the internet to a massive server farm in, say, Virginia. The server thinks, and it sends the answer back to you.
Right. It requires a good internet connection.
It requires a stable, high-bandwidth connection, which works great if you're sitting in a coffee shop.
But not so great in a war zone.
Which you absolutely do not have in a GPS-denied environment or a contested war zone. If an enemy is jamming your signal's electronic warfare, your cloud-connected robot is just a very expensive paperweight. It disconnects and falls out of the sky.
Where the lag gets you, the latency.
That's the other killer. If the latency is too high, the drone sees an obstacle, sends the image to the cloud says turn left, but by the time that signal gets back, the drone has already crashed into the tree.
So Palladyne's entire focus is edge-native autonomy.
The AI lives on the drone. It resides directly on that GuideTech brain computer we mentioned. It processes the visual data from the cameras locally in real time.
So the robot makes its own decisions.
Split-second physical decisions. It balances itself, it identifies potential targets, it navigates through a forest. It doesn't need to phone home to ask for permission to dodge a branch. And that capability enables their core software product. Swarmos.
Swarmo. This sounds a little sci-fi.
It is collaborative autonomy. The concept is that the drones talk to each other directly over a local mesh network, not just back to the pilot.
Give me a practical scenario. How does this look in the field?
All right, imagine a swarm of, say, 10 drones searching for a target. Maybe it's a mobile missile launcher or a truck convoy hidden in some trees.
Okay.
Drone A gets a glimpse of the truck, but then the truck drives behind a hill. Drone A loses line of sight. Now, in a traditional setup, that mission might fail, or it would require a human pilot to manually take control of Drone B and fly it over there to reacquire the target.
Which takes time and a lot of mental energy.
A ton. With Swarmos, Drone A instantly broadcasts to the local mesh network. Target lost at coordinates XY, last seen heading north at 30 miles per hour.
To the other drone.
To the other 9 drones. Drone B, which is in a better position, receives that message, autonomously alters its flight path, and picks up the track from the other side of the hill. Drone C might climb to a higher altitude to act as a radio relay for the whole group. They coordinate like a pack of wolves hunting.
And the human pilot just watches this happen.
The pilot manages the mission, not the individual machines. This is the whole concept of a force multiplier. Instead of one pilot flying one drone with the joystick, which doesn't scale because you run out of trained pilots, you have one pilot commanding a fleet of 20 drones.
The human says find that truck, and the swarm figures out the most efficient way to do it.
That's the idea. And they proved they could integrate this fast, right? Because buying a company is one thing, but making their technology actually work together is a whole other challenge.
Right, the post-merger integration nightmare.
And this is where the IntelliSwarm milestone from February 5, 2026 comes in. This was the big proof of the acquisition thesis. They integrated their Swarmos software onto the GuideTech brain flight computer in just 3 weeks.
3 weeks. In defense procurement time, that is basically instantaneous. Usually that kind of integration takes, 18 months? 2 years?
At least. It validates their whole velocity of deployment thesis. They didn't have to negotiate with an external hardware vendor or wait for API access or sign a bunch of NDAs. They just walked down the hall to their new engineering department and said, install this, and it worked.
It proves they can move at the speed of software, even when they're dealing with hardware.
That's the holy grail they're chasing.
What kind of hardware are we actually talking about here? We mentioned the Banshee.
Right, so the Banshee is a loitering munition platform.
Which is a nice way of saying a suicide drone.
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
A small autonomous bomber that can wait over a target area. Then there's a system called Swarm Strike, which is a broader autonomous weapon system. But we shouldn't ignore their commercial software, Palladyne IQ.
Right, the robots that don't blow up.
Exactly. The robots that sand and blast paint, we can touch on those later, but the important thing to understand is that the core technology stack is the same. Whether you're identifying a tank to destroy or a rusty patch on an airplane wing to sand, the core AI problem is the same.
Yeah.
Perceiving the world and then acting on it.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's talk about the money. Section 4, the financial realities. Because all this strategy is nice, but if you look at the numbers, in 2025 they were tiny.
They were microscopic. In
Yeah.
Q3 2025, Palladyne's total revenue was about $0.86 million.
So less than $1 million for a whole quarter?
Yeah, and most of that was government R&D grants, which are notoriously low margin and episodic. They're not recurring revenue.
Not exactly a growth stock profile at that point.
Not at all. And the commercial sales cycle was brutal. They were reporting 12 to 18 months to close a single deal. They were burning cash, waiting for customers to sign on the dotted line. But look at the guidance for 2026. This is the inflection.
Break it down. What are they projecting?
They are projecting $24 million to $27 million in revenue for the full fiscal year 2026.
Wait, from under $1 million a quarter to $27 million for the year? Percentage-wise, what are we even looking at?
That represents a 300% to 440% increase over their 2025 levels. It is a step change.
Where is that money coming from? Is it all software licenses? Did they suddenly sell 1 million copies of Swarmos?
No, and this is the nuance of the mid-tier prime strategy. They effectively bought revenue.
Explain that.
A significant chunk of that new revenue projection comes from the existing, ongoing contracts of the businesses they acquired, Crucis and GuideTech. The money they were already making from building F-16 parts and missile components is now Palladyne's revenue.
Some people might call that cheating. You didn't grow the business organically, you just bought a business that already had sales.
You could view it that way. It's called inorganic growth. Or you could view it as a very clever way to stabilize the cash flow. By buying a profitable manufacturing business, they generate cash that can then subsidize the more speculative, high-growth AI R&D.
It's a hybrid model.
Exactly. Instead of relying on venture capital to fund the cash burn, which is what they were doing, they are now using the profits from machining F-35 parts to fund the development of the next-gen drone.
It's like, imagine if a software startup bought a very profitable chain of laundromats to fund their coding.
That's a bit of a stretch, but yes.
Yes.
Except in this case, the laundromat is actually a high-tech aerospace factory that also helps you build your final product. The synergy is real.
And the backlog supports this projection. They're not just making it up.
The backlog is key. It jumped to $13 million by December 31st, 2025. That was up 30% in just the 6 weeks following the acquisition. So the newly combined entity is already winning new business on top of the old business.
What about their cash on hand? Are they going to go bankrupt before they hit that $27 million?
As of the end of 2025, they had about $47 million in cash. Their burn rate was around $2 million a month, which they had actually managed to reduce from previous highs.
So they have roughly 2 years of runway, give or take.
Theoretically. But remember, the acquired manufacturing companies are EBITDA positive.
Right, EBITDA. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Basically a measure of core profitability.
Exactly. It means the core operations of the factory make money. That profit helps offset the cash burn of the software division. It's a much, much healthier financial structure than the software-only days where they were just a funnest burning cash with almost no revenue. They've created a financial floor for the business.
It's interesting. They turned a cash furnace into a somewhat self-sustaining engine.
And that's why analysts are calling it a speculative buy. It is high risk, absolutely. This integration could fail. But if they pull it off, the reward is significant. They're trying to value it not just as a factory, but as a tech company with a factory attached.
Let's look at where they are expanding. Section 5. It's not just ground and air anymore. We are going to space.
This is the hang time contract.
Hang time. Love these Pentagon acronyms. What is it?
It was awarded in January 2026 by the AFRL, the Air Force Research Laboratory, and the objective is cross-domain integration.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning they want to make satellites, aerial drones, and ground robots work as one single cohesive team.
So the satellite sees the tank, tells the drone swarm tells the ground robot to go investigate.
Precisely. It turns a tactical commander on the ground into a strategic commander. Usually these domains are totally siloed. The satellite guys at the Space Force don't talk to the drone guys in the Air Force. The data takes hours or days to move between them.
And Swarmos is the connective tissue.
Swarmos is being positioned as the translation layer and the autonomy layer that allows them to handshake instantly. The satellite says, "Threat here," and the swarm reacts in seconds, not hours.
Why is that linkage so hard to do now?
Because the data formats are different, the communication protocols are different, the security clearances are different, the latency is different. It's a nightmare of bureaucracy and legacy technology. Palladyne is building the software that bypasses all that.
And they're working with a company called Portal Space Systems, too.
Yes, on space maneuverability, because, again, it's a latency problem. If a satellite in space needs to dodge a piece of debris or move to a new orbit to track a hypersonic missile, it can't wait for a signal from Earth.
The round-trip time is too long.
Way too long. The speed of light is fast, but the processing time and decision loop on the ground is slow. The satellite needs autonomy to move itself right now.
And back on Earth, they have this partnership with Red Cat, ticker RCET.
This is significant. Red Cat makes some very popular small drones, the Teal 2 and the Black Widow. In this case, Palladyne isn't building the drone, they're putting Swarmos inside the Red Cat drone.
So they're playing nice with others. They aren't trying to kill every other hardware manufacturer out there.
They're pragmatic. Their goal is to make Swarmos the standard. If they can put their brain in someone else's body, they will. If they need to build the body themselves, they have Croesus. It allows them to saturate the market much faster. It's the Android strategy again, run on as many different devices as possible.
And we can't forget the commercial side. The robots sanding airplanes at Warner Robins.
Palladyne IQ, yes, at Warner Robins Air Force Base.
What are they doing there?
Media blasting and sanding, basically stripping old paint and corrosion off large aircraft parts before they're repainted.
Which sounds incredibly boring, but...
It is dull, dirty, and dangerous.
Oh.
That's the trifecta for automation. Humans have to do it in full hazmat suits. It's toxic. It causes repetitive stress injuries. If you can put a robot arm there with Palladyne IQ that can see the part with a 3D camera and sand it perfectly without a human guiding it.
That is a massive win for safety and efficiency.
And the military has thousands of planes that need this kind of maintenance constantly. It's a huge recurring market.
Okay, Section 6. We have to address the elephant in the room, or rather, the Palantir in the room.
The comparison is inevitable, yeah.
Everyone asks, is this the next Palantir? Is this the Palantir of the physical world?
It's a useful shorthand, but we really need to distinguish the two. They do very different things. Palantir is the brain at headquarters.
The strategic level.
Absolutely strategic. They handle massive data analytics, cloud-based large language models, decision-making for generals in a command center. They ingest logistics data, satellite imagery, signal intercepts, and they find the needle in the haystack. They tell you what is happening on a global scale.
And Palladyne.
Palladyne is the hands. They are the physical manipulation. They are the edge computing. They are the tactical decision-making on the battlefield itself. Palantir tells you where the enemy is. Palladyne goes there and does the work.
So Palantir tells the general, we have a high probability of a target in this grid square. And Palladyne is the drone swarm that the general sends to that square to go find it, identify it, and deal with it.
Exactly. CEO Ben Wolff argues they are compatible, not competitive. One controls the data, the other controls the machine that acts on the data.
A concept link, if you will.
Yes. In a fully integrated future, Palantir software sends the coordinates directly to Palladyne's Swarmos. The loop is closed from space to the ground. And you have to remember, Palantir lives in the cloud for the most part. Palladyne lives on the edge. They are complementary architectures, not competing ones.
So we've covered the pivot, the factories, the tech, and the financials. Section 7. Let's talk risks, because this all sounds great, but execution is really hard.
The execution risk is incredibly high. You are trying to integrate three very, very different corporate cultures.
You have the AI nerds from the original Palladyne writing Python code. You have the aerospace engineers from Guide Tech designing avionics. And you have the factory machinists from Crucis cutting metal on a CNC machine.
Those groups do not always speak the same language. The cadence is totally different. A software team ships a new update every week. A hardware team ships a new product every 2 years. Integrating those cultures into a single, unified Palladyne defense is not guaranteed.
We've seen plenty of big mergers fail just because the cultures clashed.
Can Ben Wolff keep the PhD AI researchers happy while also managing a blue-collar factory floor in the Midwest? That is a huge leadership challenge.
And then there's the valuation question, the industrial multiple.
This is the big financial risk. Pure software companies trade at very high multiples, 20 times, 30 times revenue, because they scale infinitely with high margins.
Right.
Manufacturing companies, machine shops trade at much lower multiples, maybe 1 or 2 times revenue, because they have high capital costs, they need to buy equipment, they have physical limitations.
And Palladyne is now trying to be both.
And the market might just decide to treat them like a machine shop with a software hobby. If they do, the stock price might not ever reflect the AI premium that the management team is hoping for. They have to prove that adding AI to the manufacturing makes the whole package worth more than the sum of its parts.
They need to prove they are the Tesla of defense, not just the Ford with a better infotainment screen.
That is the perfect analogy. Plus, they do have this history of pivoting. Exoskeletons, then pure software, now vertically integrated manufacturing.
To a skeptical investor, it can look like flailing. What are you this year? Are you a robot company or a machine shop?
They need to stick the landing on this mid-tier prime strategy. They cannot pivot again. This has to be the one that works.
But if they do,
If they do, they solve one of the biggest bottlenecks in national security. Producing intelligent, autonomous weapons at scale in America, they could become the model for the future defense contractor.
it's a bold, bold bet.
It is. The mid-tier prime is an attempt to create an entirely new category of defense contractor. Smaller, smarter, cheaper, and American-made.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
It means we're watching the industrialization of AI in real time. We are moving past the chatbot era, where AI writes poems and makes funny pictures, into the embodied era, where AI flies planes, drives robots, and builds missiles.
Which leads us to a final, provocative thought.
As we see this technology mature, swarms of drones coordinating lethal force without GPS, making their own split-second decisions on the edge, we have to ask ourselves a pretty fundamental question. Are we witnessing the end of the human-in-the-loop doctrine?
The doctrine that says a human must always be the one to pull the trigger.
Right. Or are we just seeing the ultimate evolution of the human-on-the-loop, where the human sets the mission, sets the rules of engagement, but the machine handles the complex execution? Palladyne's technology suggests that loop is getting wider and wider, and the machine's autonomy within that loop is getting deeper and deeper.
Something to mull over as you watch the news feeds.
Indeed.
That brings us to the end of this deep dive into Palladyne AI.
A fascinating case study in agility, ambition, and survival.
Risk defined.
Portfolio protected.
See you on the next one.